Welcome to Lesson 3, Planning Organic Audits. In these next slides, we will be talking about the first stage when conducting an audit, which is the comprehensive planning of it. Correct and detailed planning will assist in an efficient and complete audit, with enough time allowed to assess the entire scope of the site and any processes. Planning for an efficient and complete audit involves the following steps. Step 1. Checking for any conflict of interest in relation to conducting the audit. Remember from Lesson 2, auditors cannot audit an operation with whom they have a real or apparent conflict of interest. This includes all commercial dealings, provision of training and/or consultancy services, as well as familial relationships in the last 2 years. Step 2. Determining the scope of the audit to identify the sites and activities to be inspected and the records to be audited, as well as conducting a gap analysis. Step 3. Arranging any logistics to ensure that all responsible and authorized staff are available at the time of audit and allowing sufficient time for you to collect information and prepare adequately for the audit. Step 4. Developing an audit plan considering the scope of the audit, which describes the flow of the audit and the estimated time it will take. Step 5. Understanding the operation and identifying the organic control points by reviewing specific records and documents held by ACO for this operation. This may include documents in Intact as well as data and information entered in the operator's profile in Intact. Step 6. Updating the audit checklist and printing the audit visit confirmation form in Intact, as well as organizing sampling equipment and chain of custody and test request form, if required. Step 7. Preparing questions and discussion points for the opening meeting. Step 2. Scope and gap analysis. Determining the scope of an audit includes identification of standards the operator is certified to, for example, National Standard only, or ACOS as well. Type of audit, for example, initial, annual, unannounced or additional. Type of operation, for example, producer and/or processor and/or handle activities. Sites to be inspected. These will be identified as addresses to be visited. This information will be available to view in Intact when an audit is allocated to an auditor and is also included on the audit notification letter that is sent to the operator with the auditor copied into the email. Following the review of the information available, the auditor will need to note if there is any stage, process, site, or record in the flow of certified organic goods that is not clear, that is, conduct a gap analysis. If an auditor considers that the audit is beyond their level of competence, they should contact the audit coordinator to discuss reallocating the audit. These screenshots are from the Intact web portal for an auditor and show how to access information about the auditee. The opening screen shows the audits allocated to the auditor under New. Use the scroll bar to see further information to the right, such as the services, National Standard and Australian Certified Organic Standard. To see further information about the auditee, select the audit order by clicking in the box to the left of it. A range of buttons will appear. The Entity button will give you access to all the information about the operation. Files give you access to documents such as the Organic Management Plan, previous audit reports and non-compliance letters, etc. If you have no conflict of interest with the operation and are competent to complete the audit, it can be accepted using the Accept button. If you have a conflict of interest or do not consider that you are competent to complete the audit, contact the audit coordinator at ACO before rejecting the audit. The 3 dots on the right-hand side of the Entity screen will give you access to a drop-down list of the available tabs of information. If you accept the audit using the Accept button, it will move to the In Progress tab in the portal. Step 3. Logistics. Upon receiving the assigned audit, the auditor will need to review the operator's profile in Intact to ascertain the complexity of the operation and the possible risks to organic integrity of the products. If there were non-compliances identified at the last audit, consideration will need to be given to the amount of time required to assess whether the corrective and preventive action taken has been effective to address the issue. This will enable estimation of the time the audit may take, and consequently whether 1 or 2 audits can take place per day, taking into consideration the travel time required between each operation. Arrange a date and time with the operator for their audit to take place, unless the audit is an unannounced audit. This is to ensure that key personnel, including an authorized person, will be available for the audit to take place. Key personnel may include appropriate representatives from production, processing, storage, and accounting depending on the nature of the operation. Confirm the address where the audit will commence. Check with the operator whether there are any specific directions required or suggested landmarks that will be helpful in locating their premises. Inquire whether reliable internet access is available on-site. If not, the checklist can be taken offline to the Intact Offline Audits app or the Intact mobile app. Make sure they have the correct PPE to wear and the required equipment for each audit, whether it be a factory, farm, or retail shop. Send a reminder to the operator a few days prior to the audit to ensure the key personnel will be available at the scheduled time. This will also prompt the operator to review their OMP or OHP, if they haven't already, to confirm that all information is current and correct. Once the audit date and time are confirmed with the operator, they should be added to the audit order in the Intact web portal as the target date and scheduled time. Step 4. Audit Plan. Audit plans are required by some of the organic standards and are a handy tool for taking a systematic approach to the audit. The example of an audit plan shown in this slide is available in the downloadable resource section of this training program. Auditors can use this template, or they may wish to create their own for the audit planning process. An audit plan is useful for documenting all the information for a systematic approach to the audit. The audit plan is sent to the operator prior to the audit so they are aware of the structure of the audit and can ensure that key personnel are available at the estimated time. Step 5. Understanding the operation. It is important for an auditor to understand the operation and identify the organic control points prior to the audit. This can be achieved by reviewing specific records and documents in the operator's Intact profile. The Organic Management Plan will be comprised of the following current and relevant documents. Depending on the scope of certification, the operator will require an Organic Farm Plan, Organic Livestock Plan, Organic Beekeeping Plan, Wild Crop Organic System Plan, Organic Handling Plan, Organic Management Plan for Wholesaler, Retailer, Licensee Processor, Allowed Input Handling Plan, Farm Map and/or Floor Plan, Process Flow Chart. These documents can be found in the Files tab in an Intact web operator profile by searching on keywords, as shown in this screenshot. Other supporting documents that the auditor may need to check for in the Files tab in an Intact operator profile include previous audit reports, current organic certificate, client product assessment spreadsheet, product ingredient declaration, cosmetics evaluation spreadsheet, for approved recipes and/or formulations, label approval letters, to ensure the correct labels are in use, derogation letters, when a temporary digression from the standard has been approved, non-compliance, corrective action request letters, when previous issues have been identified that need to be checked at audit, input compliance letters, for inputs that have been reviewed and approved by ACO, document review reports for new applicants. Examples of some of these documents are shown in the following slides. If you're not sure about any aspect of the certified operation, you can contact an ACO certification officer for assistance. Product formulation approval by ACO. For processing operations, the ACO approved product formulations are found in the Client Product Assessment spreadsheet available in the Files tab of the operator's Intact profile. The first tab has a list of the product names. By opening a specific product tab, the approved ingredients, suppliers and their relative percentages can be found. Prior to the audit, the auditor can use this information to select products for the in-out balance and trace exercises. At the audit, the auditor will compare the purchasing and production records for a selected product against the ACO approved formulation. Labels approved by ACO. If the certified operator has had labels approved, then ACO will issue a label approval letter. An image of the approved label will be integrated into the letter. At the audit, the auditor will ask to see a sample of the labels and compare them against the corresponding label approval letters, which should be held on file by the certified operator. The label approval letters are also available in the Files tab of an operator's Intact profile. If the certified operator has applied for a derogation or temporary digression from a standard, then ACO will issue a derogation letter. Derogations will also be recorded in the Findings tab of the operator's Intact profile. If the operator has, for example, planted non-certified seed, or used solid non-woven plastic or synthetic material sheets for mulching, or fed non-certified feed to the certified livestock without an approved derogation recorded, this action is recognized as a non-compliance. Let's consider a derogation in more detail: the use of non-organic feed for livestock. For example, if a certified livestock producer needs to feed non-organic hay to calves during weaning, they would apply to ACO for a derogation to use non-organic feed. They would need to declare that they have tried to source certified organic hay from at least 3 suppliers, but been unsuccessful, as justification for granting a derogation. They would also need to provide evidence that the non-organic hay was not genetically modified and was free from prohibited substances or contaminants in the form of a supplier statement. Finally, they would need to provide evidence that the hay constitutes no more than 5% of the feed ration. An ACO certification officer would review and assess the information provided in line with risk management for organic integrity. If approved, the derogation will be recorded in the Findings tab of the operator's Intact profile, and a derogation letter would be issued to the operator. The derogation will have an expiry date. If the application for derogation is denied, the operator will be notified in writing, including the reason for not granting approval. Prior to the audit, the auditor can check whether the operator has applied for any derogations. At the audit, the auditor's role is to verify that the operator has current ACO approval for any derogations and that the conditions of the approval have been met. In our livestock feed example, this may mean that there is evidence to verify that the non-organic hay did not constitute more than 5% of the feed ration and was provided by the nominated supplier. If an operator has not met the conditions of the derogation approval, or has fed non-certified feed to certified livestock without an approved derogation recorded, this will result in a non-compliance being issued. Compliance issues might have been raised from a previous audit, or there may have been an issue that has been identified between audits. Regardless, if a compliance issue is raised, the operator will be notified in writing about all findings. As you will see from the example in the slide, there have been 2 corrective action requests identified, and the auditor can clearly see the citation from the standard, what the non-compliance was, and the time frame allowed to correct the issue. In this instance, the operator is certified to both the national standard and ACOS, and separate non-compliances have been raised, 1 for each of these standards. These non-compliances were to be addressed by the 4th of October, 2023. The operator may have addressed these issues, but the auditor's role is to verify that the corrective and preventive action provided by the operator in response to the non-compliance has been implemented and is effective in addressing the non-compliance. All findings, such as major non-compliances, minor non-compliances, ongoing improvement, feedback to operator, can be found in the Findings tab of the operator's Intact profile. Input approval by ACO. If an operator wants to use an input that is not specifically listed in the standard or is not a registered allowed input, they can provide details of the input to ACO for review. If the input is found to be compliant with the requirements of the standards, ACO will issue an input compliance letter. A screenshot of the ACO input compliance letter is shown here. This information is helpful to the auditor when verifying that the inputs used by the operator are compliant. Step 6. Updating the checklist and printing the Audit Visit Confirmation Form, AVC, in Intacct Web, as well as organizing sampling equipment and chain of custody and test request form, if required. It is best practice to update the checklist just prior to the audit to ensure you have the latest copy of the questions. Please note that any information that you may have already entered into the checklist will be overwritten. To update the checklist, go to the In Progress tab and select the Audit Order to reveal the Edit Audit Order button. It is important to note that the first time that Edit Audit Order is selected, it automatically enters that date as the audit date. On the day of the audit, please remember to update the date in the checklist. Next, select the Preparation step, then select the Update Checklist button. To print the Audit Visit Confirmation that is unique to an audit order, go to the In Progress tab in your Intacct Web portal. Select the Audit Order to reveal the Print button. From the print screen, the Audit Visit Confirmation can be saved to your files for the audit. The Audit Visit Confirmation can then be printed to take to the audit or signed electronically, if you have the relevant software. If you are unsure whether there will be internet access on-site at the audit and you want to be able to use the checklist, you can take the audit order offline to the Intacct Offline Audits app or the Intacct mobile app. An auditor will always need to carry some sampling equipment with them, as well as a chain of custody and test request form. If a specific sample is requested by ACO or routinely required, such as a soil sample at an initial producer audit, the required equipment will need to be organized. We will look at this in greater detail in Lesson 4. Step 7. Preparing questions and discussion points for the opening meeting. To facilitate an efficient audit process, it is helpful to have already determined the following: the product and timeframe you have selected for the in-out balance exercise. For example, this could be selected based on likelihood of substitution and/or something different from previous audits. This will be covered in more detail in Lesson 5, Audit Trails. Secondly, the product you have selected for the trace exercise. For example, this could be selected based on risk to organic integrity and/or something different from previous audits. This will be covered in more detail in Lesson 5, Audit Trails. Thirdly, the previous issues that need to be checked based on non-compliance or corrective action request letters or feedback to auditor provided by ACO. Lastly, any relevant ACO notifications, such as changes to the standards or other certification requirements. At the on-site opening meeting, the auditor may wish to identify specific questions, activities of interest, and the audit trail requirements, as this will give the operator time to access any further records that may be required to provide a necessary outcome during the audit and clarify any issues raised by the auditor. So, in summary, this slide highlights the main points of why planning an audit is so important, as without good planning, the auditor may overlook these important points. The auditor is preparing to complete an audit that confirms the practices being carried out on site are identical to those recorded in the Organic Management or Handling Plan, verifies a sound and compliant operating system, demonstrates complete records are in place for the audit trails through the scope of the entire operation, obtains objective evidence of compliance and/or non-compliance. This will enable the ACO certification officer, who reviews your report, to identify non-compliances and/or make certification decisions.